batteries are expensive to replace. If you're thinking about buying an electric car this year, then you need to watch this video. The electric car community are going to be furious about this video because we're going to be talking about some simple truths about electric cars that most people who don't buy electric cars just simply won't know. So today's video, we're going to be going over some of them. And why should you believe this YouTuber? Well, by night I might be a YouTuber, but by day I am working in the used car industry, dealing with used cars and leasing deals and finance. So I know a thing or two about cars, but my family history has been in the motor trade for over 45 years. I'm going to try and cover this as broadly as we can. We're going to go from new cars to used cars, and we're also going to try and teach some current electric vehicle owners some stuff they don't know before they buy their next electric car, which might be helpful. Now, we're firstly going to start off with range. Now, range is an extremely complicated subject when it comes to electric cars. Normally, when you buy a petrol or a diesel car, you don't wonder how far it will go on a tank because obviously electric cars and petrol cars have a different time of fueling system, and they take a little bit longer, and therefore you kind of want to buy a range that's enough to do it. Also, petrol cars tend to have a much larger tank that can do a lot further range than, say, a electric car. So it makes perfect sense that you look at the range of an electric car before you go ahead and buy one. And this is where it gets really complicated because manufacturers use a set procedure. Every country in the world is different. The US, the UK, we all use different lab techniques for testing cars. WLTP, and I really can't remember the one in America, but we all use different systems. Those systems are what the manufacturers use. Now, basically, if you look at a manufacturer's car and one has 250 miles range WLTP and the other one has 400 miles WLTP, you can be assured the 400-mile car can do more than the 250-mile car. What you shouldn't do is look at the 400-mile car and think it can do 400 miles. Oh, no, 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 no. That is where buying an EV gets complicated because no one drives like a lab-conditioned car. There's occasional people who can achieve those figures, but the majority of you watching this, probably 99% of you, will never hit the range that your car estimates it can get. So what are you supposed to do? Because if you ask owners on EV forums, they'll all give you wildly inaccurate figures. Some of them will quote you extremely high ranges, close to the WLTP, and other drivers like to be off Ferrari drivers at light, so therefore will quote you really small range figures. So it really depends. Now, what I would do, I go to a website like EV Database, look at the car you're thinking of buying, look at the lowest range it has on there, because you'll never ever get that low. Personally, I've never seen that low off any driver using EV Database. So use that mileage, and if that is acceptable for you, or it's within 10-20 miles of acceptable for you, the worst range you ever want in the winter, buy that car, because that will do the range that you want. Now, you would think you've got over this, you've bought the car, the range is there, you think range anxiety is over when it comes to EV driving. Oh no. And that's because each EV has its own way of calculating and displaying to you a predicted range. Now, when you get in the car, you will have basically like a petrol tank system that tells you how many miles you've got on a full charge, or a part charge, or a half charge, or nearly empty charge. It will show you that in miles or kilometers, depending where you are in the world, and you may think that that is the most accurate way of driving your electric car. Well, it depends what car you have, because some of the cars will tell you you've only got 10 miles left to go before you run out, where in actual essence you've probably got about 30-40 miles if you eke it out properly. And then other cars, they are just Tesla, are wildly inaccurate and tell you you will get 300 miles from a charger in that car, but you'd be lucky to get past 220. And then other cars, they randomly change depending when you're driving it. So they could start off at 100 and then suddenly drop to 60 and then not drop for another 20 miles. They are all randomly generated numbers in my mind. There is some cars that get it really, really well and tell you that you've got, say, 10 miles when you've actually got 15. So they keep a little bit in hidden reserve, which is a good thing, and they kind of adjust to your driving style, and they're very, very good prediction algorithms. But there's very few of them. They're very far in between. Most electric car drivers who are sort of seasoned electric car drivers who've been driving a car a while will drive by percentage, and other ones will learn their car as they go along. So if the car says it will do it on EV database, then basically that's what it will do, and it will take a little bit of a few learning steps when you first get the car to work out what the actual range that your car can do. Now, I'm interested to know from electric car drivers, how accurate do you think your GuessOmeter is? Let me know down below in the description. Now, your next issue as an electric car driver is, how do you charge at home? Well, charging is a minefield in itself, and the reason is what charger do you get? Do you buy a charger? Do you buy it charged by 3-pin plug? My advice is you don't charge by 3-pin plug. First of all, it's slow, you'll miss out on some energy deals, and more importantly, that it's missing a lot of safety aspects built into what a proper dedicated charger is. We won't get into them. There's a video top right if you want to see what I think those problems are. But if you have decided you're going to get a home charger, dedicated home charger, do you go for the one the manufacturer recommends because they've done a deal with that charging company? Do you go for the one that your local electrician may recommend? That might be because he makes the most money out of it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the best charger. Well, again, luckily for you, I've done a review series of all the chargers, sorry, top right's up there, of all the chargers that I've reviewed. I've looked at over 10 EV chargers, stripped them down, tested them, used the apps, played with them, and I've tried to compile a playlist so you can narrow down the ones that you like the best. Might be on cost, might be on looks, and have a look at those reviews and see which one works the best for you. Now, once you've gone past that, you'll want to know which is the best way to charge it at home to save the most money. And you might be considering solar, you might be considering a battery, again, series on them up there, or you might be considering what the best energy deal is. And again, hint that cough, playlist is up there on finding the best energy deal that you can charge your car on. However, if you can charge at home, your life is easy. 99% of most charging for most people who have an EV you can charge at home is done at home. So what about public chargers? Put simply, EV charging in public is a nightmare and a minefield. Yes, there is some EV owners that have a simple, happy life in charging in public, and I've got to admit, I'm personally one of them. I don't have any issues when I go and charge in public using Tesla's chargers, non-Tesla chargers, but that might be because I am a seasoned EV owner and maybe I've learned some trips and tips on the way and I've been lucky. And the reason for this is EV chargers in public can have a minefield of problems. Now we're talking about current technology, which is CCS. Now sometimes you might plug your car into the charger and the charger doesn't like the car, or the car doesn't like the charger. Finding out this problem is a problem in itself. Once you've figured out if it's the car that's at fault or the charger, you can hopefully either get the car sorted or avoid a certain network or brand of charger, because some brands of chargers don't like some brands of cars, and some cars don't like some brands of chargers. So it's not a definite. A majority of CCS cars made today will charge perfectly on every single charger. Some chargers have software issues. Some cars have software issues. Now, I can tell you this, I've been driving an electric car since 2016 and it has got easier and better and rapidly better over a course of months and years since I ever started. When I first started driving an electric car, you could literally turn up to a charger and you wouldn't know if the charger was even going to turn on. Never mind if you could, actually find another charger locally to you. There was hardly any chargers, hardly they only worked. The apps were terrible. You couldn't start a charger back then by contactless card reader, which you can now, and there was very few public chargers in general. The system here in the UK has rapidly improved and around the rest of the world, but if Tesla have showed us anything, they've showed us how simple charging could be. Plug in, self-recognition, self-billing to the car, VIN number recognition, walk away, that's it. No app, no contactless card reader, no fuss, works on pretty much every single car straight away. There's obviously the MG issue with the Tesla charger at the moment, which I'm assured is an MG issue, not a Tesla issue. So there you go. It can either be the car or the charger, but charging in public isn't actually even the biggest problem. Now we'll come back to what the biggest problem with public charging is in a bit, but let's first have a look at EV maintenance. People always want to know, how much does it cost to replace a battery? How much does it cost to repair an electric car? Well, simply put, electric cars in essence are extremely reliable. They're very few moving parts, which is all true, but they still have their faults. So they can have electrical faults, they can have mechanical faults, but the main parts of the car that tend to go wrong tend to be the part that are in any other car. So your brakes, your tyres, your wishbones, your suspension joints, all the kind of stuff that's in a typical car for it to move can also go wrong on an EV. So you do need to make sure that you keep up to date with them. Now, worth mentioning, brakes, discs and pads on an EV tend to last longer because you're using regenerative braking. Regenerative braking doesn't use the discs and the pads, so it saves the discs and the pads. But no, if you're not using the brakes a lot, the discs can get quite rusty. If you live in a rural setting or somewhere where it's always wet and you don't drive the brakes and hit them hard every now and again, those discs will get naturally rusty and will probably need replacing, even if the brake pads are only 80%, still got 80% life in them. So just bear that in mind. Now, the other thing worth noting is, if you are thinking that if you get an EV, the battery is going to go wrong. Batteries are expensive to replace. The EV battery is extremely expensive to replace, but it's worth noting EV batteries have an 8-year manufacturer's warranty. 8 years, right? A typical petrol diesel car comes with a 3-year warranty. A 3-year warranty on the engine, and that is basically the main part you're insuring on a main ICE car, the engine going wrong. Now, after 3 years, does your engine suddenly explode into millions of pieces and need a full rebuild at, say, 6-7 grand to completely redo the engine? No, they don't. Same reason why your battery, after the 8-year warranty, won't suddenly fall to pieces. Manufacturers have to set a limit of when something will run out as a warranty. They can't insure everything forever, so they have a limit. They set the limit way before they think it will go wrong. So if they're saying 8 years, they're not expecting 90% of the failures to happen in 8 years. They're expecting it to last a lot longer. Same with petrol cars. If they're saying 3 years, most petrol cars will go on for 15-20 years before the engine goes anywhere wrong in, needing catastrophic rebuild. And by that time, the car's at the end of its life anyway, just for the rest of the stuff that's falling apart. EVs, obviously because of the electric motor, they're also, again, quite a sealed and easy part to fix. So the batteries, if they're going to go wrong, tend to go wrong in the manufacturer's warranty. So bear that in mind. If there's a faulty battery, it tends to show it's faulty within the first year, way within the 8-year manufacturer's warranty. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. But if you are concerned that, your battery's going to go wrong, there's companies that sell battery warranties, just like they sell engine warranties. Now, if you're buying into the Elon Musk line, that all electric cars will have to have self-driving, otherwise they'll be worthless in the future, because electric cars with self-driving will always earn you a passive income by going out to the rest of the fleet and acting as a taxi for you. Then if you're buying into that idea, then Elon Musk may have a point. Most people don't want to share their cars, but he has got a point. But if you're really concerned about passive income, forget Elon Musk's idea about self-driving cars that might not come for another 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 years. Who knows how fast this technology will prove me wrong when this video gets replayed in about 2 years when he's actually cracked it. But let's just set things aside. It's probably 5, 6 years away at minimum in my personal mind. But what about passive income now? There is an actual cars that are coming out this year that can earn you passive income by just buying the car. And we'll get back to them in a minute after we talk back again about the public charging issue. And that is, public charging is expensive. In fact, a lot of public chargers cost you more per mile than filling up with diesel or petrol, even if you had a fairly gas-guzzling petrol or diesel car. And that's because electricity prices, as I'm talking right now, even though they're coming down, are still networks charging close to £1 a kilowatt hour, which is a ridiculously high amount of electricity costs. Now, bear in mind, yes, they're paying less for the electric, but they need to factor in maintenance, service, looking after the chargers, but still, they are extortionately more expensive than they should be, in my personal mind, right now. Now, the problem also with this is if you're thinking of switching to an electric car to save money and you can't charge at home, then charging in public on rapid chargers is more expensive. Now, it's worth noting 7 kilowatts, 22 kilowatt chargers are available, and they are either cheaper than fuel or price parity with fuel. But most of the 7 and 22 kilowatt chargers are a lot cheaper than fuel, just more expensive than charging at home. And it's also worth noting, if you're charging at home or on the 7 kilowatt chargers 95% of the time and only charging on a rapid charger occasionally, you shouldn't view the rapid charger as more expensive for fuel. You should view it like an accountant. Look at your average fuel bill for the year for fueling up the electric car at home and at rapid chargers and divide that by the per mile cost. That is your true per mile cost. So if most of your charging is done at a lot less than petrol, by either home charging or 7 kilowatt charging and even the occasional free charge, then you are definitely going to be cheaper even charging on these occasional rapid chargers. Now back to my passive income idea. My passive income idea is currently only available to Nissan Leaf customers because they have something called CHAdeMO. CHAdeMO is capable of V2G, vehicle to grid, or V2H, vehicle to home. However, this year should see an influx of more cars capable of doing V2H and V2G using the CCS standard. Now hopefully this year, finally, manufacturers of cars and manufacturers of chargers will come to an agreed standard of what they should use for CCS, vehicle to grid, and vehicle to home. Now it's worth noting, very importantly, V2H and V2G should not be confused with V to L, vehicle to load. Vehicle to load in my mind is a pointless and useless technology for the vast majority of most people. There's going to be some people out there that vehicle to load will be useful for. These people may be people who go caravanning a lot or like to show off to their friends that they can blow up a bouncy castle with their car.
Want a bouncy castle?
Yeah. But for the vast majority of people, it's a pretty useless feature. Vehicle to load is limited on how many amps it can provide, and vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, is fairly powerful. In fact, I'm predicting that we're going to see much higher charges and discharge speeds through vehicle to home systems and vehicle to grid systems for home chargers coming probably later this year, 2023, or into 2024. And we're going to see an influx of manufacturers offering CCS vehicle to grid cars. Now, Volkswagen have already said that most are ID3, 4, 5 and 6 and whatever range it is will do it in the bigger spec batteries, but I'm going to see predicting other manufacturers will follow suit. Now, why is this going to be the passive income? Well, there's a couple of reasons. Now, one of them is Octopus Flux. Octopus Flux means that you can buy energy from the grid for a very cheap price and export it during peak times for a profit of around about 17p round trip. So a decent amount of money for charging up the car and sending it back to the grid later on. This could also be used for people like me. Got a huge amount of solar at work. We may be exporting huge amounts of solar back to the grid at a wasteful cost. I might as well charge up my EV at work as an employee benefit and then take it back home and discharge that back to my house. People could do that. That could be a benefit. Or there could be the other benefit, which is the national grid. Now, we've just seen the national grid over here in the UK offer something called DFS. And that's not a sofa company, it wasn't a sale. DFS made the national grid stop turning on coal generating or high carbon generating generation or more expensive generation by offering customers the opportunity to turn down their use. So they say to you between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock PM, if you reduce your typical average use, we will pay you so many pence pound per kilowatt hour. What I reckon will happen next year for the National Grid DFS event, as we see more vehicle to grid and battery systems and solar systems that can divert their load, is we'll see the National Grid say, not only will we pay you if you save off your typical use, but if you can actually export during that time, we will pay you an additional fee on top of that, again, for each kilowatt you're able to export back to the grid. And this means that the grid with vehicle to grid cars will have a real, honestly, passive income. I think that people with vehicle to grid cars, if you're buying a car in late 2023-24 and it's brand new and it doesn't do vehicle to grid, and there's other vehicles out there that do vehicle to grid, and you don't buy it, I think you're going to be making a huge mistake. Now, if you want to learn more about Octopus Flux that pays you, click this video. But if you want to learn about the EV chargers because you're thinking of buying one, check out this video here.